Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Weird News and Wacky History. I'm your host, Pastor Roland Moss, that old history dude. Say, are you feeling kind of slow and draggy about now? Need a cup of liquid energy? Then join me as we all go do the Java Jive. It's hard to imagine the 21st century work environment without the coffee break. Yet in 1952, workers in offices and factories labored from starting whistle until lunch and then straight through until quitting time. Long hours with no break. Meanwhile, sales of the black beverage have been steadily dropping off in recent years. Alarmed by the trend, the coffee-producing Central and South American countries of Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, El Salvador, and Venezuela banded together with the U.S. coffee companies to form the Pan American Coffee Bureau. The PACB hired sociologist John B. Watson to study the problem. He noticed that businesses that allowed workers a few minutes for a quick sip of coffee during the long World War II shifts had noticeably better production. Watson recommended a massive ad campaign be mounted showcasing the words coffee break. Employing Norman Rockwell-esque illustrations and prominent actors like John Wayne, the campaign cost millions, but it proved an instant success, featuring slogans like "Give yourself a coffee break" and "Get what coffee gives you." Good things happen over coffee, and coffee always gives you a break. 80% of American businesses instituted coffee breaks within the year. The South American coffee cartel never looked back, and a coffee-powered society was born. So how was coffee ever discovered? It was the goat's fault. Americans drink an astonishing 646 million cups of coffee daily. We find it hard to get going without our morning cup of Java and then need another cup of Joe to get us through the afternoon slump. How could we ever function without coffee? But how was coffee discovered? Shrouded in the mists of time, the most reliable tradition comes from Ethiopia around 800 AD. A goat herder named Kaldi found some of his flock more energetic during the day and far more difficult to settle down at night. He soon found the perky ones happily munching berries from one particular plant. Kaldi shared the story one day with a local holy man. The cleric, alas, struggled mightily to stay awake during the long middle of the night prayer services. But fortified with a brewed concoction of the berries, late-night vespers suddenly proved to be a breeze. Of course, word soon got out, and drowsy, draggy, droopy denizens of the night everywhere were soon singing the praises of the berry brew. Although this delightful tale of goats and monks wasn't actually written down until the 1600s, it's deeply ingrained in the oral caffeinated history of Ethiopia, the world's seventh largest Java producer. Try some Ethiopian coffee for yourself and discover why African goats dance. So, how did we manage to get a hold of coffee in the first place? Well, that involved a bit of grand larceny. Once upon a time, a cup of coffee was only available in the Middle East. The plants, called kawa in Arabic, which eventually morphed into our word coffee, were cultivated in the fertile highlands of Yemen. By the 1200s, Sufi mystics were drinking the bitter brew to stay awake during marathon prayer sessions and for energy when dancing the dervish. Soon secular coffee houses sprang up. So popular did they become that mosques tried banning them in the 1600s, but folks simply refused to stop sipping. Exported to Venice in 1615 from the Yemeni port of Mocha, Italian clergymen sniffed that it's the bitter invention of Satan and petitioned that the Pope do something about it. The Pontiff did, all right. Being a coffee hound himself, he sanctioned it. It took grand larceny to break the Middle Eastern stranglehold on the black brew. In 1616, a wily Dutch cloth merchant named Pieter van der Broek managed to smuggle coffee plants out of Yemen. Within decades, coffee plantations flourished on the Indonesian island of Java, in Latin America, Africa, and the East and West Indies. The monopoly was broken, and poor Yemen, no longer renowned for its coffee, is only famous these days for their oil. Alas. With coffee being that hot, how do you keep from getting burned? Here's how. You stop by your local Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts for your morning cup of Java. Unthinkingly, you pick up the scalding hot paper cup without slipping on a foldable cardboard sleeve. In desperation, you yell, "Quick, give me one of those folding cardboard cup thingies!" And you feel like an idiot. Actually, there's a name for those things. They're called a zarf. Zarfs have been around since the 13th century and come from Turkey. Much like the serving of tea in Japan and China, the drinking of coffee in ancient Turkey was filled with much ritual and complexity. The strong hot beverage was served in small handleless cups that were placed in ornate zarfs, which means container or envelope for holding and for show. Unlike our modern throwaway sleeves, these zarfs were exquisite and valuable. Some were of metal like copper, brass, silver, or even gold. Others were hand carved from woods like coconut, ebony, and hardwoods. Other materials like bone, ivory, tortoiseshell, or horn were used as well. They were also embellished with precious stones and enamel work, and exquisite engraving was a sign of status and wealth. Next time you hit your favorite coffee shop, blow your barista's mind by saying, "Don't forget my Zarf, please." And that's about all the time we have for this edition of Weird News and Wacky History, a look behind the scenes of what's been happening through the years. I'm your host, Pastor Roland Moss, author, historian, and speaker, wishing that all of your history may be seriously weird.